Welcome to Agri Business Weekly with John Jenkinson. And now, here is your host, John Jenkinson.
Well, our friends at the Kansas Soybean Commission do great work at making sure that the Kansas soybean producers have a good, strong market. And that's exactly what we need right now. And somebody to talk about all of that is the chairman, Bob Haselwood. Good to talk to you, Bob. How are you doing, by the way?
We're doing great.
Good. How do the soybeans look? I got to ask you before we get too far into this.
Well, ours look right here in our area. They look pretty good, even though they were planted a little later than we normally would like to have them planted. I think we finished up planting in the middle of June, which isn't that much later, but they look like they're doing pretty good. So
good to hear. Dropping leaves yet?
No, where we're at, we plant mostly mid to late Group 4s, so they'll be a ways off yet. We've got a few 3.9s, but we haven't looked at them to see if they're even turning yellow yet. But they might be getting close. So.
Well, they won't be too long. These days are starting to get shorter. You've been a real busy guy recently. You just returned from a trip. Tell us where you went, who you met with, who was with you on the trip.
Well, at the first week of September, I went to Tokyo, Japan, along with other producers of soybeans, corn, hog producers, beef producers, and we all went to Tokyo along with the U.S. Meat Export Federation to analyze the work that they've been doing in that country to help promote U.S. pork and beef.
This couldn't come at a better time when we're trying to work out some kind of a trade deal with Japan.
Yeah, it's a good thing. And then not only that, the consumption of beef and pork is on a steady increase in Japan. And they like the product, and they're just eating more of it all the time.
Very good. So how did all of this trip come about? I know that you said that you went with several different folks and several different organizations.
Oh, the U.S. Meat Export Federation has this, get together every so often. I don't know if they do it every year or every other year, but they said get producers over there so they can see the work that is done in promoting U.S. pork and beef and gives us a chance to talk to some of the consumers, some of the retailers, and some of the wholesalers as the advantages of U.S. meat.
Sure. So what were they saying, or probably more importantly, what were they asking?
Well, I think especially on the beef side, they import a lot of beef, and along with to be sold along with their domestic beef. And of course their domestic beef is a Wagyu breed and sells at a higher price. And then they've also import some Australian beef, which is all grass fed. So the U.S. beef fits in there a layer in between the two of them, a higher quality meat than the Australian, but maybe not quite the quality that the Wagyu that is raised domestically, but it comes in at a lower price. So I think, there's a niche in there that a market segment that the U.S. beef producer can fill that gap.
Sure.
And also on the pork side, they, we stress the fact that all our pork is grain fed, using U.S. corn and U.S. soybeans, and this also comes in at a price level, comparable to their domestic pork.
Did they happen to mention their concerns about global pork supplies and things like that with this African swine fever floating around?
No, there was a little bit of concern about it, but they, we tried to assure them that we're doing everything that in the pork industry to make sure that we don't acquire the African swine fever here in the U.S. It's not. We try to assure them that we'll have a steady supply.
Sure. What were some of the takeaways then that you felt were important after that trip?
Well, the biggest thing that I got out of it was a steady increase of the consumption of beef and pork in Japan. There was one presentation that we had when we first arrived, the first day after we arrived, that showed the consumption compared to fish in Japan over the last 10 years, and fish had a lot higher consumption 10 years ago, but compared to compared to beef and pork, but those two things have just changed places in the consumption amount. So the younger people are eating more meat instead of fish. So we want to be prepared to help supply that demand.
Sure. I tell you what, Bob, we're going to take a real quick break and we'll be back in just a moment. Stay with us. More is coming up in just a moment.